What's something you're pretty sure has only happened to you? I went to school for fine arts. We did a nude life drawing of a late middle-aged gentleman who was always very well spray tanned orange. A week later our landlord had his real estate agent come to our house to prepare to sell it. The real estate agent was orange model guy and I had a giant naked drawing of him on my wall. A zebra bit my fingers and wouldn't let go. So my dad punched it in the face. I opened my wallet and a moth flew out. Like in cartoons when a person is broke. I talked in my sleep when I was about 3 or 4. And said the phrase "it's cold. Whose pumpkin is this?" It became a recurring joke in my family. When I was 19. I got a ride home from college with a friend. It was around the beginning of October. We got out of the car at her house. We were picking up her sister before she took me home. And she exclaimed "it's cold." Then looked at a pumpkin on the porch and said "whose pumpkin is this?" My wife and I were in a casino and she sat down to play video poker. After only 4 hands she hits a royal flush for $4. 000. The casino workers come to pay her out and a lady next to my wife also playing video poker sees it and asks my wife, "Can I rub your shoulder real fast before I play my next hand so I'll get a royal flush too?" My wife and I look at each other very weirded out but my wife didn't want to come off rude. So she shrugs and says, "Sure." The lady awkwardly rubs my wife's shoulder. Hits deal. And gets a royal flush. Also $4. 000. All 3 casino workers, myself, my wife, and a couple nearby players just stood there with our jaws dropped. I'm not a superstitious man but what the FCK. My Windows 98 was left unattended and got a blue screen seconds after midnight on 1/1. I found a duck in a nightclub toilet once. Took it out. And then was barred for having a duck. I once had a live fruit bat hooked in my braces. When I was 7 I fell off the ladder on the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea's boat. I landed on a giant clam his bodyguard had fished from 20 meters below, cutting a giant gash into my foot. I am allergic to shellfish. His bodyguard carried me 5 kilometers, barefoot, to the nearest aid post. By the time we arrived my eyes had swollen and I was unable to see while simultaneously having a minor asthma attack. I was then held down on a table by my father as the local nurse sewed me up without painkillers. 10 stitches. As a kid, like 10 or 12, on a school trip to Washington DC I was walking along the mall and found a puffy envelope laying on the ground. I picked it up. It had a congressman's letterhead. Though maybe it was cash. I looked around. But no one was anywhere near me. Opened it up. It was full of weed. Goddamn. At university in NZ in 1970s, big party at my flat and I get a girl in my room. She notes my North American accent. "Where are you from?" "Oregon in the U.S. "Do you know where that is?" "Ah yes. I dated a guy from there. Maybe you know him. It's a big country. The U. Susowit was his name. My younger brother who was in the Navy at the time." 3 am. Walking to the bus stop with 2 friends. So one of the friends starts telling us a story that took place few years ago in his hometown. This kid, in college, was walking back to his home late evening. A white van stops next to him and asks for direction. He gives them direction. The van leaves. Stops 20 feet ahead of him this time. So the kid goes to the van and gets jumped on by people in it and gets kidnapped. The moment he finished the story, a white van pulls up next to us. And one of the guy asks us for direction. We give him direction. The van leaves. And stops again some 30 feet ahead of us. We stop walking and look at the van. We stood there for close to 10 minutes before the van left and we resumed our walk. Edit. Was reading a book about a serial killer. Turned over the page to see a picture of my house. The serial killer was my former landlord. Eater. He was the most prolific serial killer in recorded history. At the time I rented his former childhood home from him. He wasn't known to be a murderer. I didn't know him personally. It was through an estate agent. The poop hit the fan about 2 years after I left that house. I was sitting in my new home reading a book about him and just saw the picture of my former home. He was born and raised there and both of his parents died in the kitchen and living room there. He left at 17 to go to medical school in Leeds. Edit. About 250 victims. The book was Prescription for Murder by Brian Whittle and John Ritchie. I killed a car with a McDonald's cart laying in the road. I ran over it. It somehow got sucked up into the fan belt or something. Snapped it. My husband said I had to be the only one that had ever happened to. I try not to run over anything in the road anymore thinking it's harmless. If I do have to, I check the mirror to make sure it's still there. I was riding my Razor scooter around my front yard as a kid. There was a notorious bit of uneven sidewalk that I forgot about and the tiny, incapable wheels made impact and I flipped over the front. I was shaken but generally okay. I go to wipe a tear from my face and as I open my hand a butterfly flew out of it. He's caught the snitch. I was eating spinach dip on a patio with my girlfriend and her family when I realized I had dropped a glob on my shirt. Naturally, I scooped the mess off my shirt with another pitter and ate it only to realize it was not spinach dip at all. A bird had shat on me. To this day I only use napkins to wipe messes off myself. Even if I'm indoors. I accidentally killed a seagull with my bike once. It jumped out of a ditch next to the road and threw itself in between the two tires. The first person I served while working at an adult video toy store was my great aunt. She burst in. Started yammering on about how she was trying to use this remote control vibrator and couldn't get it to work. Before she finally looked up. Said, "Oh. Jesus. I'll come back." We never spoke of it again. Woke up to gunshots and went outside. Then saw a hooker come out of my neighbor's house with her leg blown off from the knee down. I called in sick that day. Edit. After the gunshots stopped I went outside when I heard screaming to call 911. There was a young family nearby that I thought the noise was coming from. They both survived and she shot him 3 times. I bet she stayed home that day too. I got an inguinal hernia from moving my dad's box of PRN mags when I was 10. I went into anaphylactic shock at an S&M party and woke up 2 days later in the hospital, where they had to cut off, IDK how they did it, the collar I was wearing. Cause it was locked on and my throat had swelled up so bad. I found out later that some rich dude in a sports car had NASCAR'd me all the way to the ER. Since the ambulance probably wouldn't have gotten there in time. I have pretty much no recollection of it. All I remember is not being able to breathe. But I'm glad I didn't die. Because that would have been weird to explain in the obituary. She died at an S&M party after suffocating from accidental exposure to bananas. What a way to go out. A live bird fell on my head while I was sleeping. Twice. In completely unrelated incidents. I was inside in both. Edit. Due to request. Both times they flew through an open window at night and crashed into the window I was sleeping next to. I did the only thing any normal person would do both times. I screamed like a little girl. I caught both birds. One was a middle-sized dark thing, middle of the night. No light. Drunk, and the other a pigeon. And released them. My trousers fell down in front of the Queen and Prince Philip. Well, I've been outdone. I accidentally called Prince Andrew Dents and clogged a toilet in Buckingham Palace. I don't meet too many untreated spinal meningitis survivors in this day and age. Pretty sure that went out of style with hospitals and internal combustion. But I was a hipster child who wouldn't be caught dying from some mundane mainstream disease. And treated. Not even maple syrup. I shot a fly out of the air with a blowgun from about 30 feet away. I think I may have lost my sanity due to no one believing me had my roommate not been there and witnessed it. Edit. Well, FCK me. My account has been identified by a friend of mine that lives 2,500 miles away due to this comment. When I was 8 years old, I witnessed a common mouse commit suicide. I was just walking through my garage when I saw him dart out from behind something and throw his poor little body under my foot. It happened so fast I couldn't stop my foot. I imagine he probably did it because he got behind on bills. Or maybe life was just hard for him. Being informed my upstairs neighbor is dead. Then hearing the EMTs say we're going to have to double bag him. Then hearing the neighbor's double bagged body being dragged down the narrow staircase because a stretcher wouldn't fit. Thump. 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 Stubbed my toe so hard it got shorter. I got hired for a job and the company went out of business the next day before I could even make it into work. It was a Circuit City. I got the job. Went home. Saw the news article about the closing stores and mine was on the list. I had quit my other job that I hated to go work there. Edit. Apparently this happened to a bunch of other people. But I was the only one at this particular Circuit City in Alabama. So I'm still technically correct. I was playing with a clear plastic beader in high school craft class. It was small. Think like maybe 1/3 the size of a pearl. I got bored and wandered out to the balcony. As I stepped out the door, I threw the bead over arm out into the courtyard. Except that on its way out, it nicked the bottom of the awning that came down only about 2 centimeters from the roof and I swear, bounced back to me and landed directly in my hand, which was still in the process of swinging down from the throw. I was gobsmacked. I just walked back into class and sat down quietly, knowing that even if I told someone they'd never believe me. To this day, it remains the most impressive thing I've ever done. And I've never told this to anyone until now. Had a staple in my urethra. Edit. On a Halloween I had gotten a condom with a note that said "Be safe" stapled to it. Yes. Ironic. Kept it for a few months. I wasn't having sex anytime soon, so I decided to jerk off. I didn't want to ejaculate into a tissue or something, so I thought to just use a random condom. I put it on and started jerking it. Then I started feeling uncomfortable. My penis felt weird. A bad weird. I noticed that the staple was nowhere near me. I looked at the reservoir tip of the condom and saw a ripped hole. I got scared. I silently freaked out. I then jerked off like my life depended on it. I figured that since I hadn't jerked off in a while, the force of my orgasm would shoot the staple out. It worked. Thank God that logic worked. No injuries, but still. F-king scary as FCK. Oh god, my dick just leapt off my body and hid in the corner. When I was 11 and into magic so I could get all the ladies, I was holding a quarter in my left hand and tapped it with my right. When I opened my left hand, there was no quarter there. Nobody was in the house with me. I don't know why I wasn't masturbating. And I was freaking the FCK out for the next 2 hours. It was nowhere around me. And it couldn't have flown across the room. Edit. After I discovered it disappeared, I decided to look in my clothes for the answer. I took off all my clothes and shook them. Nothing fell out. Could you try this again with my student loan bills? Okay. I'm walking through Half Price Books in Houston. The one off Shepherd. I have my nose buried in a book and bump into someone quite large. I look up and it's Mike Tyson. Iron Mike. He has 2 bodyguards flanking him. Both much bigger than he. One of them looks at me as if I'm a genuine threat. I'm 5'6", maybe 140 pounds, and says with great clarity, in a threatening tone, "You wanna move away from D, champ?" I said sure and stepped back. I was riding my bike down a hill on the way home from school and a bird pooped and it landed in my mouth. I was going pretty fast as it's like a mile-long hill, so it hit my teeth and the back of my throat at full force and I wobbled and hit a bus stop and broke my arm. I had to repeat kindergarten because I didn't learn how to share. Thanks for sharing. I once crammed 11 people in a Mazda 323. When I was walking home from the mall when I was 14. I saw a minivan pull up to an apartment complex. The door opened and I swear like 18 Hispanic people got out of it. They were also unloading lawn chairs and BBQ equipment as they got out. It was the most amazing feat of human packing I've ever seen. Edit. My father died getting teeth pulled. No, he didn't have a heart attack. It was getting his teeth pulled that ended up killing him. Dentist was a dumbass. The first customer who I had to deal with on a new job was the last person I said goodbye to the day I quit that job. It was full circle and it blows my mind every time I think about it. Did you quit after the first customer? I dated a woman in high school who left me senior year because she discovered she was gay. After college, a different woman also left me because she said she was gay. Both those women left me for the same woman. I was approached by a friendly cat who wanted to be pet without scratching me. He was wearing a harness and a boatie. I was 16 and sat in a trunk of my family SUV because we were trying to fit 12 adults and 3 kids into a 8-seater. The back door opened on the highway and I rolled out onto the open highway and faced the oncoming traffic like that stampede scene in Lion King. I dashed for my life across the highway and dove to the road shoulder. Then had a walk of triumph towards my family about 50 meters away. My identical twin brother and I both married women with the same first and middle name. So now they have the same first, last and middle name. To be fair, that didn't only happen to you as it also happened to your brother. I once ran over a squirrel with my bike. I'm an animal person and I immediately felt terrible and stopped my bike. I ran back to go check on it. His little body was just laying there in the path. I went to poke it and the little bastard jumped up and bit me. The squirrel was playing possum. Side note. Rabies shots suck. When I was 9, a chipmunk ran through my bicycle spokes while I was going down a hill. It was too fast to react. But I clearly watched him sprint at my wheel and neatly leap through the spinning death wires. Somewhere, there's a very old chipmunk adventurer, dodging swinging axes or something. I watched Battlefield Earth twice. I think it's time to mention that Battlefield Earth won a Golden Raspberry Award, among many others, for Worst Screen Couple, John Travolta and anyone sharing the screen with him. I had a wart removed from in between two of my toes. The skin grew back together to give me webbed toes just between those two. I can swim in a large left-handed circle. I had pertussis, measles, rubella, and mumps as a child. I was vaccinated against all of these diseases, although the schedule was different than it is now. I never had chickenpox, which was an extremely common disease when I was growing up because the vaccine wasn't available until I was an adult. Then I had meningitis as an adult. I'm due for bubonic plague any day now. We Estonians celebrate Street Catherine's Day as a lot of children dress themselves as women and perform an act of some kind, or sing, for delicious candy. So I was doing a handstand on my neighbor's house lobby. Suddenly I felt an urge to fart. And as the lobby was pretty small room we were all close to each other. So I pretty much farted on my neighbor's face as I was doing handstand. It got pretty awkward but they gave me delicious candy for it. So basically I received candy for farting on my neighbor's face. Cross-dressing. Face farting and candy. Estonia sounds wonderful. Hungover me decided to buy a slice of pizza one day at King's Cross. Now this particular slice was roughly the size of my face and had a good solid weight. No measly portion. With my mind solely focused on getting some greasy food in my belly I decided to eat it on the go and took the slice and walked out the store. ISHTU not friends. I was barely 2 steps out the front door when I go in for my first bite and bam, out of nowhere a giant crow appears from behind and in one fell swoop snagged my gloriously greasy pizza and bolted. To top it off, it flew to a roof across the street and performed what I can only assume was some kind of sick taunting ritual. Maybe I'm not the only person for this to happen to. But this felt like the adult version of losing your scoop 2 seconds out of the ice cream store and I'm just hoping someone can relate. Nothing worse than getting a nice sausage and bread from Bunnings and a bloody kookaburra swooping in and flying off with me lunch. I tried to catch a porta potty door as it was closing and the spring on the inside cut my finger to the bone. I was at a cross country meet, high school, and didn't want to miss it, so I ran with just a band-aid over it bleeding all the way.